Flight set to take off from the U.S. and the maintenance worker accused of trying to tamper with the flight moments before takeoff. Prosecutors now saying tonight alleged videos of ISIS killings on his phone and word of a brother in ISIS. The tropical storm slamming Texas and the Gulf right now. Up to 2 feet of rain possible in some places. Drivers and cars submerged, dangerous winds, planes upside down. And the hurricane still churning in the Atlantic, now a Cat 3. And tonight, several other tropical threats, Ginger Z tracking them all. President Trump tonight ordering new sanctions on Iran. His Secretary of State now calling that massive attack on oil facilities a, quote, act of war. The new warning, the deadly mosquito virus Triple E linked to 2 more deaths from Michigan to Massachusetts. And the rare warning to parents in some communities to keep their children indoors at night until the first frost. Authorities say the little girl, possibly stolen in broad daylight at a public park. Police believe a man led her to a red van. The feud with California tonight. President Trump telling that state it cannot set its own emissions standards. The governor fuming and ready to fight. And tonight, ABC News obtaining video. Authorities say a drunk pilot who turns around at security, accused of throwing a bottle of vodka out in the bathroom before boarding the flight, and then stopped right before takeoff.
This is ABC World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, and it's great to have you with us here on a Wednesday night. We have a lot to get to, and we begin tonight with chilling new reporting here. The maintenance worker accused of trying to sabotage a passenger jet right before takeoff in Miami. And tonight, prosecutors now say that worker had videos of ISIS killings on his phone. The new evidence presented at a hearing just today involving the American Airlines worker at the Miami airport. The man reportedly said he disabled a sensor on the plane because he wanted more overtime, that it was a labor dispute. But now prosecutors on those ISIS videos and some evidence, they say, indicating his brother might have worked with ISIS. Here's ABC's Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas leading us off.
Tonight, that American Airlines mechanic accused of sabotaging a passenger jet held without bond after a judge told him you may be sympathetic to terrorists. 60-year-old Abdul Majid Alani, a longtime employee, was arrested at Miami International Airport 2 weeks ago, accused of disabling a critical part of the navigation system of a 737 jet carrying 150 people. His alleged sabotage caught just in time, and the plane never took off. Authorities say Alani quickly confessed, but insisted he wasn't trying to hurt anyone. He claimed he was just trying to get overtime pay by creating a maintenance problem. But the FBI clearly did not buy it. They searched his phone and say they discovered ISIS videos depicting graphic murders. And they say an American Airlines employee told them Alani's brother was in ISIS and the mechanic had visited him in Iraq.
Even the accusation that somebody that the flying public trusts, they put their family on airplanes, the accusation that he may have done something to put the airplane in jeopardy breaks that bond of trust with the flying public.
Authorities say Alani had also received an article about airplane crashes involving the very sensor he had sought to disable. And he allegedly shared a message asking Allah to take action against the kafirs, or non-believers.
So let's get right to Pierre Thomas live in Washington. And Pierre, this man had worked in the airline industry for decades, but tonight he could soon be facing terrorism charges.
David, his attorneys emphasized that Alani had no intention of bringing down the plane, but the FBI is clearly investigating whether Alani was actually supporting ISIS. Regardless, he faces up to 20 years in prison if convicted of tampering with that plane. David?
Pierre Thomas leading us off tonight. Pierre, thank you. Now to that major storm slamming into the U.S., Texas getting this, and much of the Gulf. Dangerous winds and up to 2 feet of rain possible in some places by the time this is done. Rain and 70-mile-an-hour winds battering this airport in Baton Rouge, tossing planes, flipping some of them upside down, and blinding rain causing a hazard for drivers commuting on I-10. These images near Houston tonight. The region bracing for flash flooding into this evening, and more than a half foot of rain still on the way. ABC's Clayton Sandell in Galveston.
Imelda tonight is a slow-moving super soaker. No longer a tropical storm, but still dumping heavy rain in southeast Texas, snarling the commute.
We've got some kind of a collision here on the side of the road.
More than half a foot of rain in neighborhoods near Houston's Hobby Airport. And in the barrier islands near Freeport, up to 17 inches. In Galveston, neighbors pitched in to help stranded drivers.
This looks like a river.
The house where Hank and Brittany Hollingshead live is now an island.
It's like water out of a bucket. Just super, super hard rain.
In Louisiana, 65-mile-per-hour winds whipping through Baton Rouge, flipping several small planes.
And David, you can see behind me here, this water has shut down a number of streets here in Galveston. And this part of Texas is expecting another 10 inches of rain by the end of the week. David?
A real mess. All right, Clayton, thank you. We're not only following that storm, but there is a hurricane right off the East Coast and now other tropical threats in the pipeline. We are not in the clear yet. So let's get right to Chief Meteorologist Ginger Zee tonight. She's tracking it all again for us. Hey, Ginger.
David, all you have to do is look at that satellite image. There are 5 areas of interest in the Atlantic alone. Jerry, Umberto, a couple of areas of interest, 10 and 30% both. But Tropical Depression Imelda, what's left of it is what we start with. What Clayton's been talking about, I'm talking 15 to 21 inches from Sargent, Texas to Freeport. Look at those bands. They've had 3-inch-per-hour rainfall rates. Now those flash flood watches extend to Shreveport, Louisiana. You could see 6 to even 10 inches on top of what you've already had in the next 24 hours. Then we go to Umberto. Just got a report in. Bermuda had a 100-mile-per-hour gust, and we're watching Jerry because that'll be out of Bermuda's hair by tomorrow. But Jerry headed, looks like toward islands, but looks like it's going to stay away. Most of the computer models curve it away from the United States. All that would mean was some high surf going into early next week, but you know we will be watching. David.
All right, Ginger, thank you. Next tonight, President Trump announcing new sanctions on Iran after that massive attack on oil facilities in Saudi Arabia. The U.S. and Saudi Arabia continue to point the finger at Iran, and tonight Secretary of State Mike Pompeo calling it an act of war. So what happens next? Here's ABC senior White House correspondent Cecilia Vega now.
With tensions rising after that attack on key Saudi oil facilities, today President Trump announced he was slapping new stiff sanctions on Iran, but stopped short of a military response.
There's plenty of time to do some dastardly things. It's very easy to start, and we'll see what happens.
Today, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo laid the blame squarely on Tehran, calling it an act of war.
We were blessed that there were no Americans killed in this attack. But anytime you have an act of war of this nature, there's always risk that that could happen.
The Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen have claimed responsibility, but today the Saudi military released new evidence that they say points to Iran, charred remnants of drones and a missile, and this surveillance video showing the missiles coming from the direction of Iran. One of the president's staunchest allies, Senator Lindsey Graham, says the administration needs to act swiftly.
They're testing us, they're testing the region. And I think if we don't act decisively now, the worst is yet to come.
But President Trump has wavered, first threatening that the United States is locked and loaded, then taking a softer tone.
I don't want war with anybody. I'm somebody that would like not to have war.
Today he stood with his 4th national security advisor, former top State Department hostage negotiator Robert O'Brien, the president declaring nothing is off the table.
There are many options, and there's the ultimate option, and there are options a lot less than that. And we'll see. We're in a very powerful position.
You say the ultimate option? Are you talking
No, I'm
about
saying the ultimate option, meaning go in war.
Iran today adamantly denying involvement and warning that any U.S. retaliation would be met with a rapid and crushing response.
All right, so let's get right to Cecilia Vega live at the White House tonight. And Cecilia, Iran's president, as you know, scheduled to be in New York on Monday for the UN General Assembly. But tonight, Iran saying that the State Department still has not approved his visa. And we know President Trump was asked about the visa today for Iran's President Rouhani.
He was, David. He said if it was up to him, he would let the Iranians come. And to be clear, it is up to President Trump. As for whether the president and President Rouhani will meet when they're in New York, potentially face-to-face next week, the president said he hasn't ruled out. But today, David, the Iranians said there will be no talks.
You'll be following it all. Cecilia, thank you. We turn to the alarming new warning tonight for parents. With the death toll now rising from that dangerous mosquito-borne illness known as Triple E, we have been covering it here, and 2 more deaths now reported in Michigan. 5 in all from Michigan to Massachusetts, and now parents in some communities are being told to keep their children inside at dusk until the first frost. Here's ABC's Alex Perez.
Tonight, a rare but dangerous mosquito-borne illness claiming 2 more lives in Michigan. The worst outbreak of eastern equine encephalitis in a decade. 18 cases across 5 states, killing at least 5, including 64-year-old Greg McChesney. His family says he went from healthy to brain dead in just 9 days.
If somebody is over 50 years of age, under 15 years of age, they're not only more susceptible to it, but also more susceptible to getting serious infection.
Some communities are stepping up air and ground spraying and urging affected areas to cancel outdoor activities, especially for children, around dusk until the first frost of fall. Nearly 1/3 of the EEE cases with brain symptoms are fatal, and many survivors suffer long-term neurological problems. 5-year-old Sophia Garabedian from Sudbury, Massachusetts, was rushed to the hospital with brain swelling 2 weeks ago. Tonight, she's slowly improving.
It's scary. It's a very serious illness.
David, most people exposed to the virus have mild symptoms. According to the CDC, the best protection when outdoors is to cover up and use insect repellent with DEET. David?
All right, Alex Perez, thank you. Next tonight, the child who authorities say may have been taken in broad daylight from a public park. An Amber Alert was immediately issued for the 5-year-old girl. Dulce Alaves was last seen with her mother and little brother buying ice cream on their way to the park in Bridgeton, New Jersey. Police say she was lured by a man from the playground into a red van with tinted windows. And here's ABC's Whit Johnson.
Tonight, the FBI joining the desperate search for a little girl, possibly taken from a New Jersey park in broad daylight.
I went looking for her and I asked people around us and I couldn't find nothing.
An Amber Alert issued for 5-year-old Dulce Maria Alaves. New surveillance images showing Dulce before she disappeared Monday at a convenience store getting ice cream. Later at Bridgeton City Park, police say a man may have lured her from the swings where she was playing with her little brother and drove away in a red van. Dulce's mother was in her car just 30 yards away when the girl vanished.
All of us are missing her a lot.
Dozens of officers, police dogs, and neighbors scouring the park for clues. Divers even searching a pond, but turning up nothing. And late today, the family saying they have no idea who could have taken her.
It could be anyone, even though if it's our family members, strangers. But the only thing we're asking is for her to come back home safely.
Tonight, police are looking for that red van with tinted windows and a sliding door on the passenger side. David?
Whit Johnson reporting tonight. Thank you, Whit. Next this evening, President Trump in a new feud with California tonight, telling that state it cannot set its own emission standards, revoking that state's right to set its own limits for cars and trucks. California's governor calling it a political vendetta, and he's vowing to fight back tonight. ABC's Matt Gutman from California.
Tonight, President Trump in California picking what could be a long legal fight with this tweet. The Trump administration is revoking California's federal waiver on emissions, barring California from setting its own auto emission standards. The president said is about making cars safer and cheaper. California leaders saying it's about something else.
Pure politics, and politics that could have profound consequences, not just in terms of the air we breathe in the state of California, but will impact the rest of the country.
The EPA is proposing a single national standard for tailpipe emissions, injecting uncertainty into the automotive industry. California leaders say they will challenge it in court.
Our message to those who claim to support states' rights: don't trample on ours.
The latest move against California, part of what the governor here calls the president's political vendetta against the state. The president also hitting California's other big pressure point, homelessness, suggesting to reporters aboard Air Force One it hurts the prestige of the state's major cities, saying we can't let Los Angeles, San Francisco, and numerous other cities destroy themselves by allowing what's happening. We spent 2 days embedding with LA's Fire Station Number 9, the busiest station in the country. It serves LA's Skid Row, where streets and sidewalks are swallowed under homeless encampments. Most of their calls, not fires, but medical.
You said that you saw that guy James yesterday? Yes. You tended to him yesterday?
Yes.
What was yesterday?
Same thing.
Overdose?
Deja vu, yeah. I don't know how you fix that.
Matt Gutman with us tonight from Los Angeles. And Matt, in addition to this move on emissions, the president and his HUD secretary now rejecting California's request for additional federal funds to combat homelessness, which the president has brought up on his own.
That's right, David. And HUD Secretary Ben Carson, who toured Skid Row today, said that federal taxpayers should not have to foot the bill for California's policy mistakes that he said helped create this homelessness problem. David.
All right, Matt, thank you. To other news, in the Federal Reserve lowering its benchmark interest rate for the second time since July, and only the second time since the Great Recession in 2008, cutting the rate another 0.25%. Still, President Trump tweeting his disapproval tonight after making it clear he wants